So we are going to graph this. First thing is we want the midline. There is no number added at the end. So my midline is simply going to be y equals 0. All right, my vertical stretch, well, that's the number in front. So my vertical stretch is 2. It's positive 2, so it's not going to be upside down. And lastly, the number right here in front, this right here, this 1/3, will create your period. So for tangent, it's going to be pi divided by that 1/3, which becomes pi times 3/1, which is 3 pi. So my period is going to be 3 pi, my vertical stretch is 2, and my midline is 0. So let's start by drawing our midline. Boom, boom. And draw my midline down the middle, if I can. It's kind of sometimes annoying to draw the midline on the x-axis. All right, next, I'm going to put a line out here, and that's going to be my period. And my period will be labeled as 3 pi. So that's the end of it. Now, if we think back to tangent, halfway between that would be right here, and that would be 3 pi over 2. Isn't it half of 3 pi? 3 pi over 2. Isn't halfway an asymptote for a tangent? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a vertical asymptote through that. Halfway through the period, we'll have a vertical asymptote. All right, so now, okay, if you remember, drawing a tangent is kind of like drawing a sine. So let's draw the dots for a sine. Okay, so for sine, don't we start here, end here? I mean, technically we had a little dot right there in the middle, but we don't really have it, it's asymptotes. And then halfway through for sine, aren't we going to go up and down the amplitude? So let's put our amplitude on the graph. Well, our amplitude, sorry, there's no amplitude, vertical stretch. Let's put our vertical stretch on the graph, which would be going up and down 2. You could put a dash in the middle to get 1s if you want. So what we're going to do here is halfway up, you are going to put a dot there at 2, and halfway between here, you're going to put a dot down here at -2 to show your vertical stretch. Now, if this was sine, you draw a sine graph, but it's not sine, it's tangent. So what we're going to do now is we're going to draw tangent, which kind of goes upside down, kind of curve, and goes up, 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 and away towards the asymptote forever up. And then here it kind of curves down and goes down, 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 and it will go down closer and closer to the asymptote. And that right there is my tangent graph for this function. We're going to graph this right here. First thing we want to do is find the midline. The midline is always that number added or subtracted to the tangent, so that's going to be y equals -1. It's a horizontal line at -1. So if we go down here and put -1, you're going to have a horizontal line, and that will be the middle of your graph. Now, for tangent, we don't have an amplitude, we have a vertical stretch. So the number in front here is a 1. The negatives say we're going to flip. So we're going to call this a vertical stretch is going to be 1, and a flip is an action, meaning it's going to be upside down, not its normal look for tangent. Okay, and the period. Now, if you remember tangent has a period of pi. So to find the period, it's going to be pi divided by b. You're going to take pi divided by that. So when I take pi, and I divide by this value, which is pi, kind of redundant, I get 1. So your period is 1. So let's graph this. Well, first thing I want to do is just put an edge over here as the end. That is the period. So we're going to call that 1. So halfway down is a half. Okay, next. Well, for tangent kind of the dots for tangent look like sine's dots. So for sine, hopefully you remember, sine starts at the midline, ends at the midline. And normally, sine hits at the midline, but for tangent, there's an asymptote down the middle. So really, right through that middle, there's actually an asymptote. So that right there would be your asymptote through the middle. So really, this dot right here is not a dot. It's just where your asymptote is. Okay, so next, halfway between these, we want to go up and down for sine. We want to go up and down our amplitude, or sorry, our vertical stretch. So our vertical stretch is 1, so we're going to go down 1 to -2 and up 1 to 0. So halfway through, since this is a flipped one, we're going to go down to start with. And then halfway through, we're going to go up. It's an upside down sine graph because of the flip here, the negative. So now we sketch it in. So your graph will start here, hit right there, and go down towards the asymptote. It'll come like this and start approaching the asymptote, just like that. And we have one period of that tangent function.